introduction. So just at a high level, I am director leading the conversational AI space for Charles Schwab as part of the AI Center of Excellence. And the topic today is conversational AI from start to scale. This is a really, really exciting topic. And primarily, the significance of conversational AI that we see today is immense. Every person has probably come and touched upon some form of conversational AI. And this significant process is being due because of significant advances that has been made in the NLP space. And we saw that reflected in this conference, right? We had about 3 or 4 speakers who spoke on NLP, and that's what's the backbone when it comes to conversational AI. And this conversational AI, it has also multiple use cases. It could be used from helping from mental health perspective to sales optimization into really helping with contact center, which is my focus of area. And the breadth of this conversation could be a lot. So what we'll do is just get a poll in terms of a check of how the audiences are. Are you starting out in the journey of conversational space? Have you actually implemented a chatbot before, or are you in the process of scaling a chatbot? If you could just choose A, B, or C in your chat, that will help me to align my talk in terms of if I should go broad or if I should go more deep. I'll take a minute to see if I get some responses.
Yeah, something is coming in the chat.
Great. So I see a lot of beginners, right, just starting out in this space. So given that's the case with more beginners and some intermediates, I will start more broad and then go a little bit deep, and then obviously can connect with me later outside. All right. So just to lay the land, right, like why is it so important that chatbot has evolved in this COVID era to be one of the primary channels of communication with our consumer, right? So a survey done by Gartner states that 70% of the white collar workers will engage with chatbot regularly. And there are statistics to show millennials actually use it on a daily basis. So that's where this conversational space is headed in terms of its importance and a key channel of interaction with the clients. Just to ensure that we all are talking a common language and how this works at a very high level, I have illustrated this from a very basic standpoint. A user comes in, uses a device like a mobile app on which a chatbot can be installed. You could be on the .com, you could be using an integrated voice response system, which is basically calling into a client rep, and type or voice your utterance. Utterance is how the users ask for the intent that they're interested in. And this utterance essentially goes into the platform, which we call a conversational AI. This utterance gets translated into an intent. Intent is the purpose of what the customer or the user is asking for. For example, a user can say, hi, could you help me book a ticket for San Francisco, for example, right? So the intent in this particular case is to book a ticket. Also, the conversational AI, it has to identify different components, as in what are the entities, what are the slots, and these information help to complete the action on the intent. So the slot could be something like the destination where you are traveling to and from where you are traveling to. So those to and from is the slot component, right? And in terms of time, tickets, all of those are the information that will be required to complete the conversational transaction. Once this information is identified, It's integrated into the response management system. So think of this as the integration backend, where it'll go connect with different APIs, identify the information, and then that information, once based on the intent, all the information is done, the transaction is complete, the fulfillment information is sent back to the user through the channel of choice in which they are interacting. So at a very high level, this is how the user sends out trends, gets converted into an intent, and a fulfillment happens with a response. Having said that, in terms of the advances this conversational AI has made, still consumers prefer humans rather than using the chatbot, right? And what is the reason for this? A lot of that has been spoken in terms of the conference today, but at a very high level, the foundation of the conversation are words. And if you think about it, words could have multiple meanings. That's morphology. Bright could mean bright light, or bright could mean in terms of smart, right? Bank could be a bank of a river, or it could be a bank in terms of maybe your dollar transactions. Similarly, there could be phonology, where you accentuate the words with certain emotions like so good or hello or no, right? So there is an emotion which you are attaching to the way you say to the word, and it just takes a different meaning. Semantics, in terms of the way you use the phrases, it's hard for the machine to know, do pigs really fly? Who knows, right? And the last one of many lists is in terms of the new logisms, right? Because the words keep getting added as we keep evolving. There are words like selfies, retweets, netizens. I am still learning all the new words that get added to the dictionary. But at a very high level, right, the foundations of the machine to understand these nuances in these words to be able to respond to is where the complication lies. And if you think about it, a conversational AI is really a multi-class classification problem. And as we take on to this journey, there are 3 decision points that we all need to make. Do we need to build or buy? Second is what kind of teams and competencies that we need to put together. And third part, where I'll spend most time of the talk, is around how do we crawl, walk, and scale. So build versus buy, it's a very important decision when we think in terms of our business scape, right? So it's, if you are really taking this as a strategic asset for the organization, where it could provide you a key differentiation in terms of competitive advantage, then yeah, build makes sense. Otherwise, buy will help you get there better and faster. Also, if you think about the strategic assets, like I was mentioning, there are actually companies like Wobot or Visa, which are building for mental health, and those spaces may be very different, and that may be a strategic asset for them. So they may start thinking about building this multi-class classification conversational AI platform versus an organization that uses it for a customer representative self-service purposes. In that particular case, a buy may be a more way to go about. So determining if it's a strategic asset or not is one of the key dimensions I would look into. Second is expertise. When you build something like a multi-class classification problem, and we are scratching surfaces on NLP, even though we have made so much stride here, you need a deep, deep NLP bench strength, and you need to build it. And once you build it, to maintain it, and having that kind of an expertise in this space is the key differentiator that will help you to build that strategic asset, right? The third dimension is time to market. Do you want to think about, do you want to quickly deploy this? Then if you want to build it, it's just going to take you much longer to get there versus taking a vendor product and instrumenting that. Cost of ownership goes along with the time of market. Just because you need a deep bench strength, you need enough time to build that, the cost will be high. The last part is the solution. And when you think about the solution, you can go in and build using open source libraries or create your own open source libraries. And there are vendor solutions which are vertically focused, like you have Google's Dialogflow, you have Amazon's Lex, Microsoft Louis, so on and so forth. But you also have vertical focused conversational AI platform vendors, such as Clink, which is used for banks, Hyro AI, which is used for healthcare. So depending upon your time to market, your requirements, you can decide in terms of which direction you want to go in terms of build and buy. And even within buy, you want to go for a non-vertical focused solution or a vertical focused solution. All right, so quickly coming in terms of how do we get started with conversational AI? This is a very much a multi-team sport, unlike a lot of the other products that I've helped work on. The reason being, before I get there, let me just do a quick poll, right? Uh, who owns the conversational AI in your organization? If you have one, it'll be just great to see the ownership that the audience sees currently. If there's any response on the poll.
Yeah, it's coming in. You're looking at chat, right? Siddharth?
Yeah. So I see some folks speaking about technology. Great. And it just depends upon the organization. Some houses in product, some house at AI COE. My experience with this is that it's really a team sport, and all the executives need to come together and really support this, specifically because you need the product management, the tech team, like you rightly called out, but there are other key, very important players in this domain. One is conversational designers. So think of these as the content and conversational architects. They help design how the flow of the conversation will be with your users, with your clients, with your consumers, right? So they come into place and they play a very important role in bringing this conversational AI space to life. The next one is data scientists, right? Like they bring the left brain in terms of all the analytical thinking, which comes along with NLP instrumentation. And they play a very core role in bringing this multi-class classification into picture. Either that could be vendor supported or it could be in-house built, right? Compliance also plays a very important role. Like there have been previous situations like Microsoft had created a solution called Tay. It was a chatbot which they had to take off the grid because of the way it was responding. So compliance becomes important in terms of the organization that you operate, right? And UI, UX, product management, and engineers, they continue to play a key role to bring the products to life. All right, so how do we go and take this conversational AI once you've decided that, hey, this is the vendor solution I'm going to go with. These are the teams I need to put together. How do I make it and realize it on the ground? And just a quick poll. Again, I know a lot of you said you are beginners and intermediates. So I believe in terms of the intents that you have either instrumented or looking to instrument, probably would be either less than 50 or between 50 to 200. The reason that is important is based on that, the kind of scaling you do is much different than when you want to scale with intents of over 200. That is in a lot of the larger organizations. All right, so how do we go about bringing the conversational AI to life, right? First is doing the intent instrumentation. What I mean by intent instrumentation here is understanding what intents would your chatbot, your conversational AI platform be able to respond to. And there are multiple ways to identify it. One is look at the call center data that you have in terms of the kind of questions your customers, consumers, or clients are asking. Look at the FAQs and searches that your users do. Speak to the subject matter experts in your line of businesses. But you can also use what I've listed in the bottom row the data science components that can bring it to life, right? So you can use clustering, topic modeling, and verb noun pairs. So think of it in terms of, for example, if it was a bank, you could be saying uh, withdraw withdraw a check, right? So withdraw being the verb, check being the noun, or it could be deposit a check. Again, deposit being the verb, check being the noun. So running this verb noun pairs or doing clustering topic modeling in various data sources that is really there in terms of rich data within your organization, you can take advantage of that and identify those intents that you want to build out. Second part of this is you need to prioritize those intents, right? Like you don't want to build out all the intents to begin with. Go slow, start with few intents, get a hang of conversational AI platform. It's a tough sport that you're trying to play, right? So prioritize those intents based on the traffic that you have seen clients ask on those topics and the complexity it entails to actually implement and deploy that. Think of complexity from perspective of if you had to integrate it to the multiple APIs on the back end to find the response to provide to the client for fulfillment, that would be much more difficult versus if it's a static response or a navigational response. Static response could be in terms of if client is asking for certain intent, the response is more like a definition, right? So for example, in a brokerage industry, it could be something like what is a stock, or can you help me understand what is investment? The answer could be investment is XYZ. You can navigate to this page and you'll find more details, right? So those navigational and static responses are much easier to respond to. So highly recommend starting small, starting with something much easier. And the third part where I spoke about really designing that conversational design and flows where your uh, content architects come in and help out is going to be the key in terms of designing that. Once you have identified those intents, prioritized those intents, thought about the flow of it, the next thing is really around model training. And in this particular case, your data to train the model are the utterances on how clients ask for those intents or for those queries, right? So take those utterances and really clean them up and enrich them using some more synthetic utterance so you can get more synonyms of how that particular utterance could be said in very different ways. So you can use NLG for adding more of those synthetic utterances. Second is remove a lot of conflicts between intents to reduce misclassification. Obviously, if you are going and building out conversational AI or chatbots with 10 or 15 of those intents, the chances of misclassification in a multi-class classification problem will be lower. But in the case where you're really going above 50 and even going above 200, where it really starts scaling, it becomes really hard. And you may want to use something like separation and cohesion score. And using a separation and cohesion score will help you really narrow in those utterances that help map to the right intent from classification perspective. So think of separation and cohesion score as when you have a cluster, how far are two intents apart from each other in the vector space? That's the separation of the two intents. And think of cohesion as within that one cluster, which in this particular case is an intent, how close are all the utterances, right? So when you look at in those map, then it becomes easier to understand that certain utterances could lead to misclassification from training data perspective. So remove those training data so that you have only very clean and kosher data that you want to use for training. And the last part is using k-fold cross-validation along with it, right? So use it smartly in terms of run through your training data with different k-folds and identify the best fold that yields into the best outcomes and use that as part of the training. So once you do the model training, run it on your validation data set. Again, ensure that the model validation data set is kept separate, kept kosher, because as the feedback loop starts working through, there's a lot of possibility of really adding some of the content back into the validation data set, which could lead not to give the right performance of the model training. Then once the model is trained, move on to the deployment phase. The deployment phase, there are some things to check off in terms of maintaining consistencies of entities between different environments. Then as you launch in production and you want to monitor it, think of launching along with something like a knowledge graph, because with knowledge graph, you can provide a lot of key value pairs for context in terms of the response fulfillment. So knowledge graph becomes very interesting when you want to go in advanced and scale your conversational AI just from providing some basic static responses to more personalized responses to your users. And the last part of it is in terms of performance evaluations. Now, once you have deployed this conversational AI platform, right? Now, how do you know if it's actually working when your consumers are using the conversational AI, right? So what you do is you develop a robust sampling methodology, and you identify certain set of utterances that you want to validate of when clients have actually used the chatbot. So when clients use it, look at those utterances, see what your model is classifying, and see if it's the right classification. If that is not, you need to go back and retrain the model with those new utterances, because the very interesting component about this conversational AI platform, it's always evolving. It's like a living, breathing organism in its own sense. The next thing is the intents, right? Like clients will keep telling you what are the new intents they want. And you'll find that a lot of times when you're doing the performance evaluation of those utterances, you don't have those intents. And as part of this, also put in your product analytics in place in terms of, who are your clients who are visiting, doing a client segmentation. So what kind of personalizations that you can provide, what's the adoption, which intents are working, what's your accuracy, which one of them have higher precision, which of them have higher recall, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of analytics that goes on once you put that into production, is very much the key to keep this operating nice and clean, because consumers are really looking for fast resolution of their challenges, and chatbot allows them to give that self-service and fast responses versus waiting in line for a customer rep to respond to. Right. So quick learnings from my journey as I went through this exercise. Like I called out earlier, leadership commitment is going to be the key to success in any large organization putting this together, especially there are so many multidisciplinary fields involved to really make it right. Second is hire and train the right talent mix, because you need to bring in the right content architects, you need to bring in folks with a lot of NLP expertise, product expertise, tech expertise. Just having that right talent with a very strong cross-functional, interdependent team playing together is very, very key for success. We all know this, crawl before you walk, and you keep iterating. So crawl before you walk, that's why I called out picking up very few intents, understanding high traffic on it, finding the ones which are easy to implement and deploy, and putting it into production, really throttling or releasing it to small set of clients, learning from them, keep improving, and keep building on top of it, right? Cannot emphasize on fourth point enough, strong NLP data science talent is going to be the big accelerator in this space. They bring the skills, the domain expertise to really think about the linguistic aspects of it and to make it, bring this to life. And the last one is given this is living organism in my mind, always experiment, what's working, what's not working, keep tweaking. And a lot of times you can keep tweak it on a weekly basis. You can be as agile as you want to be with this particular product. Right. So thank you. I can